as a completions engineer, what I always considered my ultimate job role to be is that I had the most efficient frac crew, right? I was pumping to design and that I was pumping as many hours a day as I could be. That is my ultimate job.
WTF, good data. Danica, what does this mean?
Good data, I would define as something that you can get actionable insights out of, right? So that can be obviously a pretty broad spectrum of things, but good data would be a full cohesive data set. It's enabling you to answer the questions you're looking to answer. So in the completions realm, right, I think the most obvious use case is we're all trying to pump more hours a day.
Yep.
So I want to be recording data specifically around when I'm not pumping fluid.
Yep.
If I can figure out when I'm not pumping, then it's easier for me to figure out why I'm not pumping. And then I can do something different the next day or the next pad to increase how many hours a day I'm pumping. Because when I'm pumping, I'm getting the most money out of my frac.
When you're not pumping, so there's non-productive time and
Exactly.
You're just burning cash. So can you maybe just give me a little bit of background? So as a completions engineer, like what's been your experience?
The standard for completions data historically has been at the end of my stage, I get a CSV of raw data. So it has a bunch of channels. The headers are always different. And it tells me what happened while I was pumping. And that's really, really important information. And I don't want to discount that. It's really important for reservoir. It's important for an understanding of how your stage treated. But from an operations standpoint, I have these huge gaps of, okay, well, it took me 10 minutes to swap between stages. I don't get any of that information right now.
So that's what the gaps are. So there's different stages that are happening and it's just a blind zone.
Yeah. And I'm not getting any bit of information about that historically. You are literally just getting a CSV output that I would then have to wrangle and put back together. And it could be different from pad to pad. It could be different from well to well or even stage to stage if they reset their frac van and their headers change. And then I'm manually having to spend time to piecemeal a data set back together in a usable fashion. And I don't have time to do that.
So are you making assumptions in order to fill in the gaps? Like what's the process? How do you actually go about when you have these blind zones? How would you actually go about trying to figure that out?
You are reliant upon hopefully your well site supervisors or your on-site representatives, your company men, one of the zillions of terms we have in oil and gas.
Yeah.
But for my guy on site, I'm reliant upon him to hopefully add like some contextual information into my well management software, right? So,
Yep.
But half the time they just put in the time log well swap. And one well swap was 5 minutes, and one well swap was 6 minutes, and one well swap was 20 minutes, and one was 2 hours.
So you have no idea what the actual issue is.
Nope.
They're just adding in, hey, this took this much time. You're like, well, I've already kind of know that because I know that there's a gap in the data set.
Yes. And so then you don't have any pressure data. You know, you're not seeing that, oh, well, frac was ready to go, but we were waiting on wireline to swap, or hey, the water team wasn't ready to go. When I'm live streaming my water data, I'm live streaming my wellhead data, I'm live streaming my frac data and my wireline, well, then I can see, oh, frac was, primed. They were ready. They've been ready to go, but I can see that our sand silos, right? We didn't have enough sand to start the stage. We knew we wouldn't have enough. We don't start until we have enough. And so it's obvious to me, oh, well, we waited 20 minutes for a sand truck to finish offloading. And that's why that took a 20-minute swap. And therefore, I need to be working with my logistics coordinators to be making sure that we're not doing things like waiting on sand, because I'm spending money on my frac crew, on my wireline crew, on every piece of my daily rental for a commodity.
So by having good data and by having actually data, let's say from every service provider that's actually happening on a job site, it actually gives you the transparency to understand what's actually going on,
Yes.
where you're losing time, what area is actually responsible for that, so you can actually make decisions to influence that.
Exactly. And I think historically, when you don't have that, there's a lot of finger pointing, right?
Yeah. The blame game?
Exactly. Water says they were ready to go. Frac says they were ready to go. Wireline says they were ready to go. and the wellhead says they were, and so does sand.
So
And
who do you trust?
exactly. Who do you trust? I don't know. When I'm in the office seeing this hour or this data 24 hours later, a week later, when I, through my invoices and the other daily tasks I have, by the time I get through all of that and I want to go back and do a post analysis, nobody, my guy on site, he showed up yesterday. He just got back from his 2 weeks off. He doesn't know what was happening on Tuesday of last week.
Yeah.
He can't give me any insight into it. I'm not going to call a guy on days off and be like, hey, do you remember what was happening at 10 a.m. last Tuesday?
Yeah.
They're like, maybe that was the stage where we had a sand issue, or maybe that was this, frac was doing some pump maintenance, right? He won't remember. And so if you're not live streaming everybody's data set, then it becomes really, really, really difficult.